Hey everyone, in today's lesson we're looking at submissive language. Submissive language is when you speak in a way that makes you really small and not important, and the person to whom you're speaking is so special and so amazing and much more important than you. An example of a character who uses submissive language is Dobby the house elf. Dobby the house elf is in all the Harry Potter films. Here is one of Dobby's quotes, and this is from Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. Dobby is a free house elf, and he can obey anyone he likes, and Dobby will do whatever Harry Potter wants him to do. So what's interesting about this quote in terms of submissive language is Dobby is a free house elf. And the thing about the house elves in Harry Potter is they are like the slaves of some of the wizards. The bad kind of wizards in Harry Potter have house elves as slaves and they do everything for them. But Dobby is a house elf who considers himself to be free, but yet if we look at his language, he says he can obey anyone. When you obey someone, it means you do what they tell you. So he's free, but yet he obeys anyone. So it's a contradiction. And Dobby will do whatever Harry Potter wants him to do. So although he's a free house elf now, I guess Dobby hasn't changed that much because he's happy to do whatever Harry Potter wants him to do. Because Dobby is very grateful to Harry Potter and he respects him very much. So we see it in the language that he uses. So most of us, we aren't going to use submissive language in such an obvious way like Dobby the house elf, but there might be signs of it in our speech, and that's what we're going to look at in this lesson. I'm going to give lots of examples where without realizing it, we might speak a little bit like Dobby the house elf. Okay, first, before we get there, I want to talk about what this kind of language shows about us as a person. Some of it's good, and in some situations we might look at it as, we might see it as a negative thing in some situations. It might be good for us sometimes, but if we use it too much and we make ourselves small in that situation, maybe it's not helpful for us. So first of all, when we talk in this way, sometimes it has the appearance of being very polite language. And that's good in a way, isn't it? Because it seems that we have good manners and we're a charming person because we're being very polite. But then if we go too polite, sometimes it doesn't seem that genuine or authentic, perhaps. So when we use this kind of language as well, it shows that we're considerate people. We're people that think about the needs of others first. The people we like especially, we make them very important and we care about what they think. So this shows that we think of other people and not just of ourselves. This kind of language also shows that we're conscientious people. It means that we care what other people think of us, and we want other people to think that we're kind people and good people and helpful people. And then the next thing this kind of language shows about us is low status. That's another way of saying, oh, I'm not very important, you're more important than I am, or you're more important than I will ever be. So it's not very helpful to use that kind of speech in many life situations, for example, in many jobs. But then on the other hand, in some jobs, if you have a big boss, your big boss is probably really happy if you make yourself small and look up to them. So it really depends on the job that you do. And lastly, using this kind of speech shows that you're deferential. It means that in the way that you deal with other people, you show a lot of respect towards them and you show a lot of reverence. And reverence is a word that we would usually use in relation to God, to revere something that's so grand above us. So in that sense, if we're deferential to other people by using submissive language, we're making them godlike. So we can see that if we do a lot of this language, it can be quite an extreme effect in the way we deal with other people. We make them so big and ourselves so small. And that's what Dobby the house elf does. So here are some examples of ways that we probably don't realise we're using submissive language. We might look at these phrases and these sentences as if they're polite things to say, but then we've probably not stopped to ever think about it. Okay, so in this example, it's like, I must ask you for permission for everything. Even small things, I must ask your permission first. I can't just do it. So let's imagine you are in a new place or you're at somebody's house and you've never used the toilet there in their house or the loo. You've never used it. So you would say to the person, do you mind if I use your toilet? Or do you mind if I use your loo? Now, someone who spoke in a more direct way, or a way where they didn't use this kind of politeness about, can I have permission? They would just say, where's the toilet? There's no, is it okay? Where is it? I'm going there. Just give me the information. Another example. Is it okay if I use the toilet? Is it okay? Well, why wouldn't it be okay? Maybe if the toilet was all overflowing and there was a problem with the plumbing that day, maybe then it wouldn't be okay. But 99 times out of 100, it usually is okay if you use the toilet somewhere. Would it be okay if I use the toilet? Same example. And would it be okay with you if I were to use the toilet? When we make the sentence longer like that, by adding in more polite words, then we become more and more like Dobby the house elf. Because all of these are asking for permission, but when we put in extra polite words like here we're basically repeating, would it be okay with you? And then to say, if I were to, we're repeating, we're so nervous about saying what we want to say that we add in more words and we take longer about it. So that's another sign that we are making ourselves, we're being so polite that we're making ourselves small in language. Okay, so another thing that people do that's similar to Dobby the house elf is that sometimes we don't trust our own judgment and our ability to make decisions. So we ask other people what we should do. So Dobby, he's a free house elf now, but perhaps he's not good at making decisions. He wants to know what other people would do first. And then when they tell him, he'll make the decision. But really he's not making the decision because he's asking everybody else first rather than asking himself. So let's give an example for these sentences. imagine you live in England. It rains quite a lot in England, but the rain can be unpredictable. You don't know necessarily it's going to rain in the morning when you leave your house. You might look up at the clouds and it's a little bit cloudy, but it might rain, it might not. So because you're not sure, you might ask your mum or somebody you live with, your housemate or something, you might ask what they think about the weather and the situation for rain. And that way you don't make this big decision by yourself of whether you bring an umbrella out with you that day or you don't. So really you want to know, is it going to rain today? If the answer is yes, you'll bring an umbrella and you won't get wet. But you say it like this. Do you think I should take an umbrella today? Which means, do you think it will rain? Do you think it's better to take an umbrella today or wear a rain jacket? I've written bowl there, but we can change it for jacket. That would make more sense. What jacket do you think is better? So maybe I've got a jacket that's really warm that I want to wear for a really cold day, or I've got my rain jacket and I'm asking, what jacket do you think is better for them to decide for me by thinking about the weather? And this example, we can imagine it like, let's say you're going out with someone, you're going to go for a coffee that afternoon, or maybe it would be something a little bit more special. Maybe you'd be going out for dinner or something, and you say to that other person, should I get ready now? Or should I start getting ready now? Because depending on what they say, that's when you'll change your outfit and get your hair ready and your makeup. So all of these examples, if they are for small choices, like taking an umbrella out or what jacket to wear, these are signs that we trust other people's judgment more than our own. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but it depends on the person that we're asking. If we just ask everybody, what should I do? What do you think? If we always ask every single person and we don't make decisions for ourselves, that shows that we are a bit like Dobby the house elf. But if there are some people whose advice or knowledge we really respect, then I don't think it's wrong to ask them for things like this. I'm just showing so that we're aware how we can build sentences in a way without realising it and never really thinking about it. Coming next, we've got some more examples. The next example is a situation where you hate to impose. When you impose on someone, you're disturbing them so much. You're coming to them with your problems and you feel bad about doing that. So you don't really want to impose on someone. And because of that, the language shows that you're sorry in a way. And the language shows a higher level of politeness than we would normally use because we're imposing. We're really sorry about it. So let's say you have to go and talk to your boss, and you can see your boss is on the phone in the room and he doesn't like to be disturbed. You might go and open the door and say, sorry to bother you, but... Or you might say, excuse me, sir, or madam, if it's a woman. These two words are considered to be honorific language. When you call someone a sir or a madam, it's showing a lot of respect to them. When I was at school, we always called the male teachers sir, and we called the female teachers miss. We didn't use the word madam. I'm not really sure if schools in England still use the word sir, because in a lot of ways we've lost so many of these traditions of showing a lot of respect to people. So let me know in a comment if you know what people use at school, whether they're still saying sir. So if you say, in this example sentence, excuse me, sir, the fact that we're using sir or madam shows a lot more respect than if we just say, excuse me. Next, knock on the door. Sorry to disturb you, or sorry for intruding. When you disturb someone, you've ruined their situation they were in before. Perhaps it was all very calm before, and now you've disturbed them with your big problem. And when you intrude on someone, if we call a burglar an intruder. So for you to intrude on someone is not considered to be a positive thing. Much like how the burglar intrudes in your house. If you're intruding on someone, it's very much disturbing them and not desirable at all. Next situation. This one is more... I think we'd use this one in a different situation. This one is, perhaps you've heard, there are some people talking, they're having a conversation, and perhaps you want to interrupt their conversation to say something. You might say, don't mind me, but, and then say whatever it is you're going to say. It's not such a huge thing as some of these other examples. And this other example could be, you just have something very, very quick to say, and perhaps you've been waiting for a moment to say it, but the people keep talking and it feels like there's not a good moment. But if you don't speak now, you'll be standing there all day. So you say, sorry, just one moment. And you try and say what it is you want to say quite quickly. But in other situations, if we use that, if we say, sorry, just one moment, it's because we feel we can only take one moment of that person's time. If we take more than one moment, it's too much, you don't deserve it. And lastly, instead of just asking a question when we want to know something, some people say, may I ask you a question, or can I ask you a question first? So they get that permission. May is generally considered even more polite than saying can. All right, so now I thought we would go back to Dobby the house elf and look at some of his best quotes. And we're going to look at house elf speak. That's a way of saying how house elves speak. What kind of language do they use? So let's start with this one. Dobby is very sorry. Dobby had to iron his hands. And he gets so cross with himself. He hates himself so much for making a mistake that to punish himself, he'll iron his hands. He'll burn his hands to show how very sorry he is. And what's interesting about Dobby's language here is Dobby is speaking about himself using he refers to himself as Dobby. So it would be like me talking about myself and saying, Jade does this. When somebody, it's really unusual language actually, because we call it speaking in the third person, and in British English, the only person who's really known for doing that is the Queen. So it's a bit unusual to get a house elf doing it, but I suppose it just gives the when he talks about himself that way, it gives an unusual quality to his speech and his character that most other characters don't do. So that's why it sticks in our minds. Or maybe it could be, just thinking about it now, that Dobby has no sense of self. In a way, he has no, because he's so much about other people, he has no personality, that in a way, he doesn't have a me. He's just the name, and he looks at himself from the outside. Maybe I'm going a bit deep there, but it just came to me. Next example. Dobby is used to death threats, sir. Dobby gets them 5 times a day at home. So poor Dobby, he works as a kind of slave to the wizard family, and they're so horrible to him, and they treat him so badly that they give him death threats every day of his life. So imagine how traumatizing that would be, and how scary it would be, and how abused poor Dobby is. But yet he says, oh, I'm used to it. Poor little elf. And the next example is, Dobby is always having to punish himself for something, sir. They lets Dobby get on with it. So he has to give himself his own punishments. It's a kind of responsibility in a way. And for a house elf, maybe this is seen as in a way it shows how good he is at his job, because he's able to punish himself, and he doesn't need the wizards to tell him how to punish himself. They just say, get on with it. I trust you to do that. Get on with it. So Dobby, being a very good house elf, he knows how to punish himself. And the last example here is, socks are Dobby's favourite clothes, sir. And here are some socks. So whereas humans tend to think about socks as, in a way, when we find them on the floor, we find them to be dirty, even if they're clean socks. Odd socks are never a desirable thing. We especially don't like other people's socks. For Dobby, they are outfits. So he takes perhaps the lowliest and least luxurious piece of clothing that many humans have, and to Dobby they become favourite special outfits. So there we know a little bit about Dobby's language, and if we use a lot of effects like Dobby does when he's speaking, calling other people sir, and making ourselves small, this will show other people that we are less important than them. So what you can do now is do the quiz on this lesson. And thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again soon. Bye!